Okay, so I'm ready to now change the scale of the book, and let me demonstrate how I go about doing that. I'm going to isolate just the book for now. The first thing I want to do is reduce my geometry level down to a level 1. I also want to go down into the export settings and make sure merge and group are both turned off. And then I'll go up to the export and I'll export this out as an OBJ. I'm also going to go to the pages and do the same thing. So I'll reduce that to its lowest level. And once again, export out pages. And finally, the skull, which, if you recall, the skull is actually a combination of both the skull mesh and the 3 individual teeth that we combined and we merged as one unit. Now you can actually successfully export this from ZBrush and then export it back or import it back into ZBrush without a problem. But again, it's very important to make sure that you have the export with merge and group turned off. So I'll now export the skull out, and I'm going to switch to Maya, and I'll go ahead and import in those meshes that I just exported out. So we have the pages OBJ, and I'll import in the book 12 OBJ, which was the book cover. And then finally, I'll import in the skull, which was skull 4. That takes a while because it's a pretty dense mesh. Okay, so for now I want to just focus on the cover and the pages. I'll select both of those and I'll go under the animation tool set in Maya over to create deformers and my lattice tool. I want to make sure that I have my settings dense enough for movement. Because the X is the most important area, I'm going to increase to a value of 6. That'll give me 6 individual sections, and then 4 and 4 in the other, in the Z and the Y. And I'll say create. And so now I have a lattice that now encompasses the book, and I'm going to select on this first section of lattice and slightly move that in. That's one of the tidy areas that needed to be adjusted, and then I'll select both of these sections and just move those in slightly. And because of the distortion, I want the book to still remain balanced with the compass. I'm going to select on the right side and just move that in gently. And so that gives me the book a much more uniform proportion to the concept art. I'll go ahead and hit history, which will automatically lock everything to scale. I want to make sure that the pages also fell within the parameter of the cover, which it did. And finally, I'll turn on the skull now. And there's 2 things that I'm looking to do for the skull. The first is to, of course, squeeze it down a little bit in height. And then also, if we go into the bottom portion of the skull and bring that up into the pages. So I'll go ahead once again and go to my lattice. We can keep these at 4 in all axes, and I'll create. So the first thing I want to do is select my top row, and I'm going to bring that down a little bit, and then I'll grab the 2 top rows and bring them down a bit more. So that's good. That definitely reduced it almost by half, maybe just a little bit more in the top. Okay. And now for the bottom portion of the skull, I'm going to bring that, the second part of the lattice, and I want both of these now to fit within the cover. So here is my cover. of the book. The skull is now squashed and hidden within the cover, so if the book cover opens, the skull won't be penetrating through the back side of the cover. I'm now happy with that, so I'll go ahead and select my history once again to lock it. And so at this state, I simply need to export all of these components back out. So I will export out the skull, and I'll just call this skull fix. I'll do the same for the book cover. So call this cover fix. Now it's important, at least in Maya, that we have groups turned off. If groups are turned on, sometimes when it brings in your mesh back into ZBrush, it changes your vertex count. And I'll say export selection. And then finally the pages. So pages fix and export. So we've fixed all of the scale adjustments within 3D, exported them back out, and now I'll re-import those back into ZBrush, and you'll see just how easy it is for us to make these updates. So since the skull is active, we'll do that first.